Breakpoints allow a developer to set particular nodes that the graph will stop at. And this is really useful for human approval, for debugging and replaying, for editing graph state. But what happens if we actually want the graph to be able to interrupt itself? You can think of this as an internal breakpoint, and it can be based on some condition like, something about the state of the graph that flags or triggers what we might call this dynamic breakpoint. This can be achieved using node interrupt. We're going to talk about this right now. So first, I'm going to define a really simple graph where in step 2, I'm going to throw a node interrupt based upon some condition. In this case, it's based upon the length of the input. So it's a really simple example, but let's have a look at this. So I build the graph, again, 3 steps. It's super simple. I'm just printing the state in each case. I'm just returning the state in each case, and I'm printing the step. So it's nice and easy. And we'll go ahead and run that. So there we go. We can see the graph stops at the second step. It's never printed because of this node interrupt. The input exceeds 5 characters. We passed in hello world. Now let's actually convince ourselves to see that we're actually stopped here. So we can get the state, pass in the thread config to get it, run this so we can see step 2 is next, okay? And we also can look at the tasks. So the state.task tells us kind of the task schedule for the graph. And we can see that the node interrupt is logged here. We can see here's the message. So let's try to actually resume. We can run. And we see nothing happens. This is because we're actually just rerunning the same node repeatedly. Unless the state is actually changed, we're basically stuck here. So we talked a bit about how to update state. We can do that pretty easily. So we can just call graph.updateState, pass in the thread config, and let's just pass a new value to the input. We'll call it hi now instead of hello world. Now the state is high, and we can try to continue. And it works. So we proceed to step 2 and 3, now with high. So basically we've been able to bypass that node interrupt in step 2 because we've updated our state and we've continued the graph. So let's show dynamic breakpoints with the LangGraph API. So I have this dynamic breakpoints simple graph here that we defined above running in Studio. I can connect to it via the SDK. Here's the URL, of course. And I can go ahead and look. So we can see here's all my graphs and dynamic breakpoints is here. So that's great. I can connect to it. And all I'm going to do, create a new thread. I'll specify an input just like we did above, hello world. I'll specify dynamic breakpoints and I'll just stream the outputs. So there we go. So if we look at the current state, we just run threads.getState, and let's look at it here. So we can see that we're stuck at step 2 just like we were before, and we can see the node interrupt message is logged here. So again, we can look at what is the next node, and it's again step 2 as noted. So let's try actually just updating the state. We can do that just as we talked about previously. We'll go ahead and pass the thread ID. We'll pass an updated state of hi. We'll run that. And now we'll continue. We'll pass none again. So we've updated the state, and we're going to pass it in via the thread ID. And let's see what happens. So there we go. We proceed, and let's go ahead and get the current state just to see where we are. And there we are. We're at step 4. So we finished.